So in this video, we're going to talk about comparing rational numbers. Now we have already compared integers. So remember, integers are positive and negative numbers, but we cannot have decimals or fractions. And so what we did is if we looked at two integers, in this case, they both happen to be negative, okay? When you have two negative numbers, the one that is closer to zero is going to be greater. That idea of closer to zero only works with negative numbers. Positive, it would be the exact opposite. So remember, another thing we talked about with negative numbers is if you put these on a number line, which number is to the right? -4 would be to the right of -5. So it is greater than. And that does work with positive numbers. Whatever number is to the right of the other one is greater. Okay? The other thing I like to think of with negative numbers is it's the opposite of positive. So if these are both positive, I know 5 is greater than 4. So if they're both negative, it would be the complete opposite. -4 would be greater than the -5. Okay? So we've already reviewed that. And here's some of the rules we learned. A positive number is always greater than a negative number. So if you have a positive and a negative, doesn't matter the value, the positive number is always to the right of the negative number on a number line. That's going to hold true with rational numbers. So rational just means we're throwing fractions and decimals in there. If you have a positive and a negative, the positive is always larger. And the number to the right is always larger. So those rules are going to hold true. So we'll start with two positive rational numbers. These both happen to be fractions. They don't have to be. Some of you may look at this and already know, but you're going to get more difficult ones in the homework than just this. So there's a couple options here. If I have two fractions, what I could do is I could find a common denominator. I could go through the work of that. The common denominator here would be 12. Okay, so I could make this out of 12, this out of 12. When they're both out of 12, I can look at the numerators and see which one is larger. If you want to do that option, you can go right ahead. To me, now that we've learned it, the easier thing is to change both of these numbers to a decimal. Then I can look at the decimals and see which one is larger. Again, if you don't have these memorized, you can take numerator divided by denominator, top divided by bottom, and get that decimal. So 1/4 is 0.25 as a decimal. 1/3 is 0.3 repetend. So they both have a 0, so that's the same. So we want to look at the tenths. This is a 2, this is a 3. 3 is bigger than 2, so 1/4 is less than 1/3. 1/3 is the larger number. So that's pretty simple. Let's try another one. This one, I'm going to do 1/3 again, but this time the other fraction is 3/10. So again, to me, I could get a common denominator if you want to do that route, or we can change them to decimals. 1/3 we just did is 0.3 repetend. 3/10 is just 0.3. Okay, now if you look, these are the same. So we have to go out to the next digit. And you may be saying, but Mrs. Lang, there's not another digit. What do we put behind here if there isn't one? Is there a repetend sign? No. So our next digit is a 0. Here, this is a repetend sign, so our next digit is a 3. That means the 3 is continuous. So I have 33 and 30. The 33 is larger, so 1/3 would be greater than 3/10. All right. Then let's try a negative. So we have -4 1/5. So I'm throwing negative and mixed number at you. And -4.3. So in this case, we have a fraction and a decimal. So two choices. I could change this decimal to a fraction, get a common denominator, and work it out that way. Or I could just change this fraction to a decimal. To me, that's a little easier. So remember, with a mixed number, the -4 will stay. That's what I'm changing to a decimal. So -4 1/5 becomes -4 point whatever that decimal is. So 1 divided by 5 is 2. So that becomes -4.2. This, of course, is still -4.3. It was a decimal. I'm going to keep it as a decimal. So now we got to think negatives. If they were both positive, which one's bigger? 4.3 is bigger, but with negatives, it's the exact opposite. So it goes the other way. Negative 4 1/5 is greater than negative 4.3. So that's how you would compare numbers. You can either make them both fractions with common denominators or change them to decimals, which is just a little bit easier. Okay, now we're going to talk about ordering these rational numbers. So getting a good chunk of them and putting them in the correct order. So let's say we had 1/2, negative 2/3, negative 1, 0, 7/4, 1.2, and negative 3/4. So we need to put all of these numbers in order from least to greatest. Now in a number line, you know the negative numbers are always to the left, the positive are to the right with the 0 in the middle. So the first thing I like to do, takes a little more writing, but I like to do is put all my negative numbers. I like to rewrite this so all the negative numbers are on one side and the positive are another, because I know that negative numbers are less than positive numbers. So to me, my negative numbers are negative 2/3. Then I cross it off once I use it. I have a negative 1, and I have a negative 3/4. 0 is always kind of in the middle. It's neither negative nor positive, so it's somewhere in the middle. Now I'm going to write my positive numbers. I have a positive 1/2, a positive 7/4, and a positive 1.2. So now I at least have the negatives on one side and the positive on the other. So now all I have to do is order the negatives and then order the positives. Again, I'm going to do that by changing these into decimals. So negative 2/3 becomes negative 0.6 repetent. I have that one memorized, but you can use the calculator. Negative 1 just stays negative 1. And negative 3/4 is negative 0.75. 0 stays. 1/2 becomes 0.5. 7/4, again, if you don't have that one memorized, you can go ahead and take top divided by bottom, but that is 1.75. And that's already a decimal, so I just rewrite it as 1.2. Now you can see that they're all decimals, they're out of order. So I need to go ahead and put them in order. The negatives, remember, work opposite than the positives. So if these were all positive, negative 1 would be the biggest. So with negative, that's the opposite. It's my smallest. Negative 1 goes here. It's the furthest away from 0. Then I have negative 0.6 repetent and negative 0.75. The 7 is bigger than the 6, so that's going to go here. Then it's the negative 0.6 repetent. Then I can drop 0. Now I need to order my positives. This is 1 point, 1 point, this is 0 point, so that one's the smallest. Okay, and then 1.2, then 1.75. So now all my numbers are in order. And you may think, you're done. You're not, because it needs to be rewritten. I can't leave this as 1.75. I need to rewrite this so that I have my original fractions in there. So negative 1 was originally negative 1. Negative 0.75 was originally negative 3/4. And negative 0.6 was negative 2/3. 0 was 0. 0.5 was originally 1/2. 1.2 was 1.2. And 1.75, was 7/4. So that would be the final answer.